February 1944, London. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. Two men sit across from each other, both West Point, class of 1915, both wearing stars. One is about to tell the other he's out of D-Day, out of the largest military operation in history, out of the moment that will define the war. The decision has already been made by a third classmate, a man who once ranked lower than both of them at the academy. Dwight Eisenhower approved it that morning. Now Omar Bradley has to deliver it. And for the next 30 years, until all three men are dead, none of them will ever explain why publicly. This is the story of the classmate Eisenhower left behind, and the day the Army stopped caring about who you were at West Point. At West Point, rank is everything. The first captain commands the entire Corps of Cadets, leads formations, represents the academy, outranks every other cadet. For the class of 1915, that cadet was Roscoe Woodruff. Behind him in formation, 163 others, including two who would later decide his fate. Omar Bradley, ranked 44th in the class. Dwight Eisenhower, ranked 61st. June 12, 1915, graduation day. The hierarchy is clear, permanent, natural. Woodruff leads, the others follow. That's how it works at the academy. But 30 years later, in a windowless office in London, the power structure inverted completely. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, all Allied forces in Europe. Bradley, Army Group Commander Designate, 1st U.S. Army for the invasion of France. Woodruff, Division Commander, stateside, still waiting for deployment. And in February 1944, Eisenhower made a decision about the first captain. He approved his removal from D-Day. No ceremony, no explanation, no appeal. Just a signature on a personnel order. The classmate who once stood at the front went home. And the two who stood in the middle made it happen. That decision changed more than Woodruff's career. It changed who gets to lead in war. Roscoe Woodruff earned first captain, natural athlete, set the academy hammer throw record, kicked the winning field goal against Colgate in 1913, respected by instructors, trusted by cadets. West Point doesn't elect the first captain. The commandant selects based on leadership presence, the ability to stand in front of men and make them believe you can lead them. Woodruff had that. Bradley came from harder circumstances. Farm background. Worked as a boilermaker before the academy. One of the Augustines, cadets who arrived late, missing the worst hazing. Played baseball, 3 years varsity, good enough for professional contracts. Turned them all down. Finished 44th academically. Solid, unremarkable. The kind of cadet who does the work without demanding attention. Eisenhower was the opposite. Popular, mischievous, constantly in trouble. Played football until a knee injury ended it. Then coached. Loved by teammates. Less loved by officers monitoring demerits. Ranked 61st academically, 125th in discipline. Not first captain material. When they graduated June 12, 1915, the pecking order seemed permanent. Woodruff, leader. Bradley and Eisenhower, followers. That hierarchy lasted exactly one war. World War I separated them. Woodruff deployed to France, 9th Infantry, 2nd Division, Western Front, heavy combat. Château-Thierry, Saint-Mihiel, Meuse-Argonne. He came home decorated, experienced, proven in the only test that matters, leading men under fire. Bradley stayed in Montana, guard duty at copper mines, hated every second, watched classmates fight while he protected domestic infrastructure. No combat, no credibility. Eisenhower trained tank crews stateside, good at it, too good. The Army kept him because he could teach better than most could command. But teaching isn't fighting. Both believed their careers were over. No Great War combat meant no future in a peacetime army that valued combat above everything. They were wrong. December 7th, 1941 changed the math. The Army exploded from 200,000 to millions. Officers in their late 40s, the perfect age for senior command, suddenly became invaluable. Stars fell fast. Eisenhower went from lieutenant colonel to four-star general in 3 years, chief planner for the European invasion, supreme Allied commander by 1943. Bradley commanded the Second Corps in North Africa and Sicily, proven aggressive, effective under fire, trusted by Eisenhower. Woodruff commanded the 77th Infantry Division, training stateside, good at it, ready for deployment, still waiting. By October 1943, the Academy hierarchy had inverted completely, and Eisenhower was about to make a decision that proved it. Eisenhower had one priority. D-Day had to work. Not mostly work. Not probably work. It had to work absolutely. 150,000 men hitting 5 beaches simultaneously. Largest amphibious operation in history. If it failed, the war in Europe could stall for years. Personal loyalty had no place in that calculation. Bradley needed corps commanders, 3 of them. He selected Leonard Giroux, 5th Corps, Omaha Beach, close to Eisenhower, mentored by Army Chief George Marshall. Willis Krittenberger, 19th Corps, senior, experienced. Roscoe Woodruff, 7th Corps, Utah Beach, the first captain. On paper it worked. All 3 senior, all 3 trusted. But Eisenhower started asking the question that would change everything. When was the last time any of them landed on a hostile beach? Giroux, never. Krittenberger, never. Woodruff, never. Not in North Africa, not in Sicily, not in Italy, not anywhere. All 3 were training generals with 0 amphibious combat experience, and D-Day required amphibious assault under the heaviest fire imaginable. Eisenhower looked at Bradley. We can't risk this. Bradley knew what that meant. Replacements existed. Division commanders from the Mediterranean. Officers who'd already proven they could land under fire and keep divisions moving. Charles Corlett had done it at Kwajalein. J. Lawton Collins had done it at Guadalcanal and New Georgia. Both younger than Woodruff, both junior at West Point. Collins was class of 1917, 2 years behind the first captain. But both had landed on hostile beaches and succeeded. Eisenhower made the call. Replace them. Giroux stays. Why Giroux? His relationship with Eisenhower and backing from Marshall gave him institutional protection the others lacked. Connections mattered, but not enough to overcome inexperience. Krittenberger and Woodruff were out. The decision was brutal, necessary, final, and Eisenhower signed it without hesitation. D-Day mattered more than West Point brotherhood. We don't know what was said. No transcript, no recording, no witness account. What we know: February 1944, Bradley called Woodruff to London. 2 classmates, same graduating year, both generals now, but only one had authority to end the other's war. Bradley probably started respectfully, thanked Woodruff for his service, acknowledged his preparation of the 77th Division, then delivered it. "You're being relieved of 7th Corps, effective immediately." What did Woodruff say? Did he argue? Ask why? Demand a second chance? Or did he accept it silently, the way officers accept orders they hate? We don't know. What we know, the decision was already made. Eisenhower had approved it. Bradley was executing it. No appeal existed. Woodruff could have asked, "Why Giroux and not me?" The answer would have been obvious. Giroux had backing, Woodruff did not. But Woodruff wasn't protected by those connections. He was first captain 30 years ago. That rank meant nothing in February 1944. What mattered? Proven amphibious experience. Woodruff didn't have it. Collins did. The math was simple. For 30 years, Woodruff had outranked them in memory. In that room, none of it mattered. Bradley gave him orders. Return to the United States. Await reassignment. Woodruff left London 4 months before D-Day. The first captain went home. And the two classmates who once stood behind him made it happen. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m., Utah Beach. 7th Corps hit the sand under J. Lawton Collins, the replacement, the younger man, class of 1917. 4th Infantry Division led, 90th followed. 82nd and 101st Airborne had already dropped inland. Strong currents pushed the landing 2,000 yards south. Accident. But it worked. Lighter defenses, fewer obstacles. Casualties. 197 killed. Lowest of any beach. Collins moved fast, exactly what Bradley wanted. Within 12 days, 7th Corps captured Cherbourg, first major port secured. Lightning Joe, they called him. Aggressive, decisive, proven. Everything worked. 7,000 miles away, Roscoe Woodruff commanded the 84th Infantry Division at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. Training unit. Not combat. Not Europe. The first captain taught soldiers who would fight in the war under other commanders. November 1944, Southwest Pacific. Woodruff finally deployed. 24th Infantry Division, Philippines Campaign. First mission, amphibious assault, Battle of Mindoro. Everything Bradley said he'd never done. Landing under fire, securing beachheads, pushing inland against resistance. Woodruff did it, successfully. Then Mindanao, 5 months of island warfare across 1,000 miles. He proved Bradley's concern was not a permanent truth, only a D-Day truth. The problem? 9 months too late, 7,000 miles from the beach that defined the war. He could have done it, just not on the beach history remembered. Roscoe Woodruff retired January 31, 1953. Major General. 38 years service. Distinguished Service Medal. Silver Star. Bronze Star. Decorated. Respected. Honored. Never Europe. Never D-Day. Eisenhower became president. 2 terms. Died March 28, 1969. Bradley became the last 5-star general, first chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Died April 8, 1981. Woodruff died July 24, 1975. 30 years between the decision and the last death. And in all those years, none of them explained it publicly. Bradley's memoir, A Soldier's Story, mentions it once. Concerned that commanders lacked amphibious experience, we made changes. No names, no details, no explanation of how he told his classmate. Eisenhower's memoirs don't mention Woodruff at all. Woodruff never gave interviews about it. The silence is absolute. Why? Maybe because all three knew the decision was right tactically, but brutal personally. Maybe because Woodruff's specific success complicated the narrative. Maybe because explaining it required admitting West Point brotherhood meant nothing when the stakes were D-Day. Or maybe because the decision spoke for itself. Experience beat seniority. Combat performance beat academy rank. Proven capability beat 30-year-old memories of who led formations at graduation. That truth didn't need explanation. In the end, the silence became the explanation they were willing to leave behind. The decision to remove Woodruff anticipated a harder standard the Army would increasingly embrace. Korea. Division commanders increasingly required combat experience. Vietnam. Senior officers vetted for operational gaps before deployment. Post 9/11. Combat commands required prior combat deployment. The standard became, prove it first, then we'll give you the critical operation. Not, we trust you because we know you. That February 1944 decision became part of a broader command culture, one that valued demonstrated competence over institutional seniority. And it worked. Utah Beach succeeded. 7th Corps performed perfectly. Collins became legendary. The replacement outperformed expectations. Meanwhile, the removed first captain eventually proved himself in the Pacific. But the lesson was clear. War doesn't care about who you were at 22. It cares about what you've already done at 50. Eisenhower understood that. Bradley executed it. Woodruff paid the price. And the system got harder, more ruthless, more effective. July 24, 1975. Roscoe Woodruff dies at 84. Obituaries mention World War I, the Philippines, the 24th Division. They don't mention D-Day, because he wasn't there. The classmate Eisenhower left behind never made it to the beach that defined the war. He proved later he could have done it, but later wasn't good enough. D-Day required proof beforehand. Woodruff didn't have it. Collins did. The math was that simple and that brutal. 30 years of silence followed. No apologies, no explanations, no justifications. Just the fact that the first captain went home before the biggest battle. And the two classmates who once stood behind him in formation made it happen. Because when Eisenhower looked at D-Day, he didn't see the first captain from 1915. He saw a general who'd never landed on a beach. And on the day that defined the war, that was all that mattered. The first captain led at West Point. But leadership in war isn't about who you had been. It's about what you had already proven. And for Woodruff, that proof came too late. The beach belonged to someone else. History remembers victories. It rarely explains the cost. Subscribe for the aftermath no one talks about.